The New York Rangers have officially signed two prospects to entry-level contracts. One, of course, being Gabe Perreault, the former first-round pick of the Rangers, the top prospect currently with this organization. One of the top prospects also, just in general, in the entire NHL. He's a very talented player with a ton of upside and definitely could one day be a true kind of top-line wing talent in the NHL for years and years to come. But they also ended up signing a goalie as well from college hockey. He was an undrafted guy who actually played quite well this past season that just kind of ended just now with the University of Connecticut. So we're going to take a look at that goalie prospect, kind of see what he could possibly bring as he is an undrafted guy there. Bit under the radar, but did have a very good season. Maybe could be one day a decent back goalie in the NHL possibly, or maybe ends up being a starter. Who knows? Goalies can definitely take a lot longer to develop. So we'll take a look at him and kind of his stats, as well as we're going to take more of an in-depth kind of look here at Gabe Perreault, kind of what he can bring to the Rangers, and also kind of where he sits in these lines, as he's, of course, in the lineup, expected to be playing against the Minnesota Wild on Wednesday, which is great to see. And also, he is on a power play unit as well. So we'll take a look at who is he kind of playing with on the power play, as well as in the lineup just in general. And if you did watch yesterday's video, you may have heard that I don't have power right now, so I'm not recording this video, and same with yesterday's video, of course, in the normal spot that I normally record. So a little unfortunate there. If I do sound a little off there, that's kind of why, so I do apologize for that, but I'm still trying to keep the quality up as much as possible with me having to obviously record in a different spot than normal. But getting right into the video here, Callum Tung is the goaltender that the New York Rangers did sign, an undrafted guy out of the University of Connecticut. He's 21 years old, 6'3", 198 pounds, catches left like most goalies do. He is born in Canada though, Port Moody, BC, British Columbia, Canada, way out west there. He's 21 years old, turning 22 on November 23rd. So it's still very young. Obviously has some decent size there, 6'3", which is quite nice. He got a 3-year entry-level contract, which is pretty solid there. He's, of course, going to be joining the Hartford Wolfpack on an ATO, an amateur tryout. He is going to officially be joining the Hartford Wolfpack, which is nice there. Maybe gets a game in or two with them, obviously down there with Louis Domingue and Dylan Garand, who are obviously the main goalies down there. But I think this is a nice kind of pickup here for the Rangers, who, get a guy who had a really great season with the University of Connecticut. This past season, in his only season at the college level before he was playing in some Canadian kind of junior leagues there, like the step below, the OHL, WHL, and QMJHL, where he played pretty solid with those teams. But this past season in 2024, 2025, ended up having 15 games played, so not a ton of games played, but had a 2.01 goals against average and a .933 save percentage with a 10-4-1 record. Obviously, very, very good numbers there. Not the biggest sample size, only having 15 games played at the college level is not a ton, but like I said, he did have a decent amount of experience playing in some junior leagues in Canada there, had some good success for the most part, bounced around a decent amount there, playing with quite a few different teams at the junior level, but still performed well, and obviously had a really great season with UConn this year in college. So I think could maybe be something. You never know with goalies. Obviously, they're really hit and miss. Obviously, I don't know much about this guy. I'm not going to lie here and say I've watched him a ton, but you never know what can happen with goalies. I mean, he's only 21. He's 6'3", has that size there. You just never know. Maybe in 4 or 5 years, he ends up being a really solid, average NHL starter. You just never know. So maybe he ends up being a solid backup in the future. Maybe he can be, a starter one day. We'll have to wait and see. Or maybe he just ends up being some solid depth in the organization in ECHL or AHL, which would not be the worst thing either. Obviously, Dylan Garand eventually will be hoping to, I'm sure, get that backup spot in the NHL. So we could definitely use another body down there in the AHL eventually, but obviously Jonathan Quick did sign that extension, so he'll be back for next season. So we'll see what happens there with Garand, but I'd imagine he'll be definitely getting quite a long look there in the AHL. So maybe we see a guy like, obviously, Callum here get a look in the AHL, ECHL. We'll have to wait and see, but definitely a decent prospect to sign for pretty much nothing, as he was an undrafted guy. And now with Gabe Perreault, of course, he has officially signed his entry-level contract and will be playing this season, which is maybe a little unfortunate because, yes, it would have been nice to see him not burn that first year of his entry-level contract in this season, meaning now he's only going to have 2 years left after this season. So like next season and then the one after that is it for his entry-level contract, instead of normally being a full 3 years. It's only like the rest of this season and 2 years, which is a little unfortunate there, but it makes sense because of how kind of high quality of a prospect a guy like Gabe Perreault is. Many top prospects, coming from college, end up doing this kind of same thing, which it's unfortunate, like I said, for the Rangers kind of, but it is what it is there. Gabe Perreault is that kind of an elite talent, so it does make sense why this is happening, and he does have a bit of leverage there with him being able to make the threat of going back to college as well. But I'm sure the Rangers, just kind of gave in pretty easy there. I mean, there wasn't, I'm sure, too much of a fight. Although, yes, it would have been nice to have the full 3 years of the NHL level contract. It does make sense on kind of why Gabe would obviously not want to do that. And now for the practice lines, where we did see Gabe Perreault obviously feature in the normal practice lines as well as in a power play unit. So we'll take a look at both those. But first off here, for the normal practice lines, we ended up seeing on the top one, Panarin, Trocheck, Othman, which is great to see Othman up in that top six. And then for the second one, we saw Lafreniere, JT Miller centering them, and then a Gabe Perreault on the right side, which it's great to see him also in that top six. The Rangers have two of their top prospects in the top six there, the number one right wing spot and the number two right wing spot, which is exactly what you want to see. Obviously, the Rangers don't necessarily have one kind of by far best line, but number one, number two, there we want to call it. The Rangers have two of their top prospects up in that top six, which is exactly what I wanted to see personally, and I'm sure a lot of other Rangers fans wanted to see the same thing, with this team obviously not being in a necessarily kind of full-on win now kind of window right now this season, giving some more opportunity and a lot more kind of ice time and stuff like that to guys like Perreault, Othman is definitely going to be, I think, a really thing of importance throughout the rest of the season here, with the fact that, yes, this team is still in the playoff mix, but it's obviously not like this team has an incredible chance at making the playoffs there. So even if we do make it, probably a first round exit more than likely. So at the end of the day there, I think at this point, if you can get guys like Othman and Perreault some really meaningful games here down the stretch, this could be a really important thing and a good thing for their development. But taking a look at the bottom six there quickly, of course, we saw Kreider's advantage at Will Cooley, which it's unfortunate there that Will Cooley had to slide down. Of course, someone kind of had to there. You only have four wingers in the top six, it being Panarin, Othman, Lafreniere, and Perreault. Someone had to drop down there, so Cooley obviously being in that bottom six now, unfortunate as he has been a very good, and I would say probably like one of the most consistent players for this Rangers team this season, but unfortunately he's on the third line. And then you have the fourth line there, Brett Berard, Sam Carrick, and Johnny Brodzinski, another, solid prospect there. And Berard down there on the fourth line, unfortunate, but there's only so much room there, and obviously I wouldn't mind seeing Berard honestly on that third line over Kreider, but I definitely wouldn't say I'm too shocked that he obviously put Kreider up there above Berard. And for the second power play unit, we did end up seeing on it, obviously, Gabe Perreault alongside Alexis Lafreniere, Johnny Brodzinski, and both K'Andre Miller and JT Miller. So both the Millers, Lafreniere, Brodzinski, and Gabe Perreault on that second power play unit. And he also, Vince Cargiano did mention that Will Cooley was kind of cycling in a little bit there with Gabe, but he said it does seem like, Gabe will probably get that spot for the actual game, which is very nice to see. So I am personally very excited to see what a guy like Gabe Perreault can do for this team, because, obviously I still want to see this team make playoffs, but at this point with where this season is at, and obviously this team probably not going out there and winning the cup, or even probably going on a nice kind of long playoff run like we have seen in the past seasons, I think giving this opportunity to guys like Othman and Perreault is such an important thing to do, because you want to have your young guys playing in these meaningful games here down the stretch. And although it's not going to be a huge sample size, and maybe it would have been a little nicer to have a guy like Perreault, be in the AHL, to start there in pro hockey, to not have to play at the NHL level right away, and also keep that extra year on his NHL level contract, that would be quite nice. But and all of not happening here, and him getting in the NHL is not the worst thing either, because he's going to get to play alongside a guy like a JT Miller, who I think is a great vet for someone like Perreault to learn from. Obviously, they don't have the same kind of game style by any means, but JT Miller is still a workhorse out there on the ice. He's one of those tough, gritty kind of guys at moments. Obviously has the kind of high-end offensive talent, good defensive game, solid all-around player, and I don't think is necessarily a bad locker room guy by any means. So I think from what we've kind of heard here, I think JT can definitely be probably a good kind of vet for, Perreault to kind of play alongside there. Definitely couldn't be bad. Obviously, a guy like Lafreniere, he's a guy who has obviously at one point there been that truly kind of highly touted prospect, like someone like Gabe Perreault can. So maybe they can kind of relate together there, and, Laf can kind of help him kind of, take that step in the NHL as well. So I think there's a lot of good things here with Gabe kind of, taking that step into the NHL. I'm excited to see what he can do. Hopefully he stays on that power play unit there, stays in the top six for the rest of this season, no matter what happens, unless something disastrous does happen there, where he's playing absolutely terrible, which I just don't see happening. Maybe you'd pull him down or healthy scratch him, but I just don't think that's going to happen there. I think Gabe's going to be a pretty good player right at the start here. Don't be upset if he doesn't score like, 4 goals for the rest of the season here and like 5 assists. Don't be upset about that there. Just watch how he plays. If he's playing a good all-around game there, not making a ton of mistakes, but, trying to make some plays out there, creating some opportunities here and there, not being a complete liability defensively. Those are the kind of things I want to see out of a guy like Gabe here. I'm not a coach or a scout, but, I just want to see him play some good hockey there. And he doesn't have to, put up a point per game here throughout the rest of this season to kind of be, a decent player in my eyes. I think he obviously is going to have to take that big step there from college hockey into the NHL. He doesn't have a ton of time here to acclimate, so give the guy a little break here for the rest of the season if he doesn't put up those points. But I am very hopeful that Gabe is going to be a superstar, or at least a star in the NHL for years and years to come. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And of course, don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts on the new goalie prospect the Rangers signed in Callum Tung? Got a 3-year deal, looking like a decent potential goaltender. And of course, the other guy who got signed there in Gabe Perreault, the Rangers' top prospect, who I'm definitely very excited to see kind of what he can do. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on Gabe Perreault, on Callum Tung. And of course, like I said, I do apologize for, maybe if this video is not as high of quality as normal. Of course, like I said, I am in a different spot there because of my power being out, not having Wi-Fi, not having power. Not the best spot to be in right now, trying to make some videos, but it is what it is. I'll power through. I'll get the job done for all you out there. So I thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you next one. And of course, let's go Rangers.